4 aircraft destroyed in a single week. Venezuelan fighter jets unleashed air-to-air missiles, weapons designed for war, not drug interdiction, against suspected narco planes trying to penetrate the country's airspace. President Nicolas Maduro stood before cameras, fist raised, shouting his now infamous battle cry, "Patria, Patria, Patria," as his military commanders detailed what they called the most aggressive anti-drug operation in Venezuelan history. But this wasn't just about stopping cocaine. This was a message written in missile smoke and wreckage aimed directly at Washington. As the United States ramped up Caribbean surveillance and pressure on regional drug trafficking, Venezuela responded not with cooperation, but with force that shocked military analysts worldwide. What happened in those skies above South America's cocaine corridor wasn't routine law enforcement, it was escalation. And the world is still trying to understand what comes next. The week began like countless others along Venezuela's southern border, a region where mountains meet jungle, where Colombia's cocaine production zones bleed into Venezuelan airspace, and where the line between sovereignty and smuggling has always been dangerously blurred. But what unfolded over the next 7 days would redefine how aggressively a nation could respond to airborne drug trafficking. The first radar contact appeared without warning. Venezuela's air defense network, recently upgraded with advanced tracking systems, detected an unidentified aircraft approaching from Colombian territory. Flying low transponder dark, following terrain contours to avoid detection. Classic smuggler tactics refined over decades of cat and mouse games with authorities throughout South America. But this time, the response was different, dramatically different. Within minutes of detection, Venezuelan fighter jets were scrambled from military air bases. These weren't aging relics or training aircraft. These were combat-ready jets equipped with sophisticated weapon systems, the kind of firepower nations reserve for enemy threats, not criminal enterprises. The pilots received their orders with crystal clarity: intercept, identify, and if necessary, neutralize. The first aircraft never had a chance to turn back. According to the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, the plane refused all radio contact, continued its penetration into Venezuelan airspace, and showed no signs of compliance with military warnings. The decision was made at command level. An air-to-air missile was launched. The explosion lit up radar screens across the region. The aircraft disintegrated mid-flight, debris scattering across remote jungle terrain near the Colombian border. Whatever cargo it carried, likely hundreds of kg of cocaine, would never reach its destination. The first kill of the week was confirmed. Hours later, still processing the shock of the first shoodown, air defense operators detected a second contact, another unidentified aircraft. Same suspicious profile, same region, same apparent mission. The pattern was unmistakable. These weren't random flights. This was organized trafficking. Multiple aircraft attempting to exploit the same corridor in rapid succession. The second Venezuelan fighter jet was already airborne, vectoring toward the new contact at supersonic speed. This pilot encountered the same scenario. No response to radio challenges, continued violation of airspace, clear indicators of illicit activity. The orders hadn't changed. A second missile was fired, another explosion, another aircraft destroyed. 2 down within the same day. In Caracas, President Maduro's government was already preparing to announce what they framed as a major victory. But the operation wasn't over, not by a long shot. Later that same day, as international media began picking up early reports of the shootdowns, Venezuela's northern air defense sector lit up with new contacts. 2 more aircraft, this time approaching from different vectors, flying in from the Caribbean side rather than the Colombian border. The tactical shift suggested coordination. Traffickers attempting to overwhelm air defenses by attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. Venezuelan command responded with the same aggressive posture. More fighters were scrambled. More missiles were prepared. The message from Caracas was unambiguous. Every violation would be met with lethal force regardless of approach vector or timing. The third aircraft was intercepted over coastal waters, still technically within Venezuelan airspace, but close enough to international boundaries to raise immediate legal questions. The shoodown occurred after what military spokesmen later described as multiple warnings and compliance failures. The plane went down in a spectacular fireball visible from coastal villages, wreckage scattering across both land and sea. The fourth and final aircraft of the week met the same fate. Detected, intercepted, warned, and when no compliance followed, destroyed. 4 planes in 7 days. 4 deliberate military actions that transformed Venezuela's anti-drug strategy from passive monitoring to active warfare. When Maduro appeared on national television to announce the operations, his demeanor was triumphant, almost theatrical. Standing before military commanders and rows of unformed personnel, he delivered what was clearly meant as both domestic morale boost and international warning. "Our airspace is sacred," Maduro thundered, his voice rising with each word. "We are not a playground for drug traffickers. We are not a corridor for criminal enterprises, and we will defend our sovereignty with every resource at our disposal." He punctuated his speech with his signature chant, "Patria, Patria, Patria," as his military commanders immediately embraced as a rallying cry. Within hours, the phrase was trending across social media platforms throughout Latin America, accompanied by footage of the president, pumping his fist and celebrating what he characterized as proof of revolutionary strength. But behind the political theater, serious questions were emerging. Questions that extended far beyond Venezuela's borders and reached directly into Washington's corridors of power. The timing of these operations was impossible to ignore. For months, the United States had been significantly increasing surveillance and interdiction operations throughout the Caribbean. Additional Coast Guard assets deployed, enhanced radar coverage, closer cooperation with regional partners, multiple high-profile seizures of drug shipments. The pressure on trafficking networks operating in and around Venezuelan territory had been steadily mounting. Some analysts argue that Venezuela's aggressive shootdowns were a direct response to this American pressure, a way of demonstrating that Caracas could and would take dramatic action on its own terms without waiting for U.S. direction or approval. It was sovereignty assertion through violence, a statement that Venezuela would defend its airspace using methods that might shock Western sensibilities, but reflected what Maduro called revolutionary justice. Others saw something more calculated, by shooting down aircraft, thereby destroying evidence and preventing any investigation into cargo, flight origins, or potential connections to Venezuelan officials. The government could claim anti-trafficking credentials while actually eliminating witnesses and evidence that might prove inconvenient. The legal and diplomatic implications were staggering. International aviation law generally prohibits shooting down civilian aircraft even when suspected of criminal activity unless they pose an imminent threat to national security. The protocols favor interception, forced landing, and arrest over destruction. By using air-to-air missiles against what were essentially civilian planes engaged in criminal activity, Venezuela had crossed a line that made many international observers deeply uncomfortable. But Maduro's government showed no hesitation, no second guessing. In their framing, these weren't civilian aircraft. They were hostile intrusions, weapons of economic warfare deployed by foreign criminal organizations. The use of lethal force wasn't excessive. It was necessary, proportional, and entirely justified under Venezuelan sovereignty. The reaction from Washington was notably restrained in public. But behind closed doors, Pentagon and State Department officials were reportedly shocked by the sudden escalation. For years, U.S. policy had pushed Latin American nations to take stronger action against drug trafficking. But this response, combat aircraft using military weapon systems against suspected smugglers, went far beyond what American planners had envisioned or endorsed. The concern wasn't just about the shootdowns themselves. It was about what they represented. A nation increasingly willing to use military force unilaterally without coordination with regional partners and without apparent concern for international norms or diplomatic consequences. If Venezuela was willing to shoot down aircraft over drug suspicions, what other aggressive actions might follow? Intelligence analysts began reassessing Venezuelan military capabilities and doctrine. The successful detection, interception, and destruction of 4 aircraft in a single week demonstrated operational competence that surprised some observers. Venezuela's air defense network, often dismissed as aging and poorly maintained, had proven effective, at least in this specific scenario. The pilots and commanders had executed complex operations with apparent efficiency. This forced a recalibration of threat assessments. Venezuela might not pose a conventional military threat to the United States or major regional powers, but it clearly possessed the capability and willingness to project force within its own neighborhood. That combination, capability plus willingness, always demands attention from strategic planners. As the week concluded and debris from 4 destroyed aircraft was scattered across Venezuelan territory, Maduro's government continued celebrating. State media ran endless loops of the president's speech, highlighting his passionate delivery and his defiant message. Government supporters shared videos and memes celebrating what they characterized as a historic victory against foreign criminals in imperial pressure. But outside Venezuela's borders, the mood was far more somber. Regional leaders watched nervously, wondering if similar aggressive tactics might spread. Anti-drug agencies tried to calculate whether destroying aircraft actually disrupted trafficking networks or simply pushed them to adjust routes and tactics. Human rights organizations raised uncomfortable questions about due process, proportionality, and the precedent being set. And in Washington, officials faced a strategic dilemma that had no easy answers. The United States had pushed for stronger action against drug trafficking. Venezuela had delivered action, but in a form that raised as many concerns as it addressed. How does America respond when a hostile government does exactly what American policy demands, but in a way that violates international norms and potentially serves ulterior political motives? 4 aircraft destroyed, 4 dramatic military operations, 1 week that demonstrated how quickly anti-drug operations can escalate into something that looks suspiciously like warfare. Maduro got his victory lap in his propaganda footage. The traffickers lost planes and cargo, and the rest of the world got a stark reminder that in South America's ongoing drug wars, the rules of engagement are written in real time by leaders who may not share Western assumptions about proportionality and restraint. The skies above Venezuela's borders are no longer just transit routes for criminal enterprises. They've become a combat zone where sovereignty is asserted not through diplomatic notes or cooperative agreements, but through missiles and explosions. And as the smoke clears from those 4 shootdowns, one question looms larger than all the others. Was this the end of an escalation, or just the